Everything you need to know before putting words on the page is in this video. So we're going to go through dialogue, description, narration, exposition, so that you can just get started and start your book, right? Hi, my name is Keanu Eugene, and I'm an author. This is what I do, and I'm almost 2 million words deep. In the last 4 years, so I've written 500,000 words each year on average, and I've done my 10,000 hours of practice and research, and everything I know is going to be free on YouTube. So this is my word count. These are my stories. All links in the description. They're all public, so you can see how bad I was and how much better I've gotten. I have a free community on School that you can join if you want to suggest video ideas or talk to me directly more. And this is also my web novel where I post. And now let's get into it. Okay, we're going to go through everything you need to just jump into your story to get at least chapter 1 done. And this video is part 6 in this series. Part 7 is going to be planning a book, showing you how I plan a book, and then a very short book, and then the other part will be writing the book live, so you can see the entire process, everything I think about while I'm doing it, and editing, and then I'll give it away for free in the description, in the links below, right? So in the links below, you'll find this document, and eventually you'll find an entire free book. But for now, let's just go through dialogue and description, narration, exposition. A lot of this will be very simple and bare bones. I'll make videos on a lot of these topics individually to go more in depth, but this is the writing 101 playlist. So first one, dialogue. Dialogue is just character speaking. That's all dialogue is. Every time somebody talks, that's dialogue. So the example we're going to use for this document is, hello, how are you doing today? That's the example of the dialogue. Hello, how are you doing today? Question mark. She asked. Okay? And we're going to go through all of this. So open quotes means dialogue starts or ends, so it's at the beginning or the ending, right? Hello, how are you doing today? Question mark is the body of the dialogue. This is what the person actually says. This is the audio, right? This is what you would hear in your headphones, or like if you're listening in and not seeing anything, this is what you would hear. In the square brackets, you'll see some breakdowns of stuff, and it basically says here, this is everything the character says. Dialogue does not require perfect grammar. This is very important to know because it's going to come up later. Dialogue does not require perfect grammar. Perfect grammar is considered standard dialogue. I did a lot of research into this. It took me like a week to put together this video, and then I did research for other videos adjacent to this. Perfect grammar is considered standard dialogue, and imperfect grammar is considered natural dialogue. If you spell out a character's accent or verbal tick, it's considered dialect, right? You spell out their accent. This is Hagrid from Harry Potter, or like R2-D2 technically from Star Wars, and can be used as an intentional choice. The reason I say intentional is because you don't want to accidentally write dialect, okay? And I'll get into that more later. The question mark to indicate the character is asking something, and then I have a small breakdown of all the different grammar options. If you're in English, I only know English, so I only did English here. And then she asked equals the dialogue tag used to add description or direction. This is something people make a big fuss over, but you really don't need to think about it much. So dialogue tags are anything attached to the dialogue body. The rules get kind of strange with this depending on your writing style. So the more you write, the easier this becomes because it becomes subconscious. So anything the character does while they're saying their piece of dialogue, you put in the dialogue tag. Consider it something that happens directly during, before, or after the dialogue, performed or observed by the character speaking. Keeping this loose rule in mind makes structuring sentences easier. So you're directing a movie. That's how I like to think about it, where the camera is facing, right? And most people have seen movies, so I use cameras and stuff as examples. It's easier that way. Now, dialogue structure. This is the next step. The example is still, hello, how are you doing today? She asked, have you been feeling better? So we're adding this part to it, right? We're getting a little more advanced now. This is basic dialogue. Everything's in perfect English and it's all structured very plainly, okay? Then we have the second one, which is basic dialogue but more concise and clear. So she entered the room. Hello, how are you doing today? Have you been feeling better? And you notice we changed the dialogue tag from the middle to the beginning of the sentence. Because generally speaking, well, not generally speaking, this is something I've done research on. The closer to the start of the sentence your dialogue tag is, the better it is. especially if you have multiple people, like 4 or 5 people in a room speaking, you want the audience to know who is speaking before they read the dialogue. Because if people read the dialogue and the tag is at the end of it and it's like a paragraph, like 3 lines, then some people stop reading and they reimagine the scene with this character speaking because they assumed it was the wrong character. And you don't want people to ever stop reading your book, even for a moment. And a lot of what I'm going to go through in my entire series is just how to get people to keep reading your book without putting it down. So, body, dialogue tag, body, dialogue tag, body, right? If it's not too long. But you never do dialogue tag, body, dialogue tag, body, okay? It's always 3 things. It's never stacking multiple things, because generally speaking, when 2 people are speaking, one line or like one line would be one character then the next character, and you want your audience to get into a rhythm. So if your rhythm is always body, dialogue tag, body, you don't suddenly put 5 of those things in the next line, because then the audience will get thrown off, right? You want it to flow smoothly, and like this sequencing matters. So like if you look at a breakdown of Eminem's Rap God, right? This is where I actually learned this from. The way he raps, it's kind of sporadic when you look at it, but on paper, when you color code it, it actually lines up really well, which is part of why his songs are so easy to remember for audiences. Because even though he's rapping fast, he's enunciating, so you understand everything. But his songs also stick because of this, because it's a pattern, and humans are really good with patterns. But if you have body, dialogue tag, body, and then suddenly you have one with like 4 different dialogue tags, or 3 and like 4 bodies, you break the pattern and it feels very jarring to audiences. You also never have 2 characters speaking in the same line, which our next example will go through, right? So this one is basic dialogue with more concise, requires a response to add clarity. This adds momentum to the scene and gives the audience a moving camera effect. I will speak more on that later. But the moving camera effect is just the camera shifting between multiple points, and we describe things as the scene unfolds. This needs like a whole like 3-part video for that. But the example is, hello, how are you doing today? Have you been feeling better? Next line, because the next character is talking, different character. He turns to her, much better, thank you. Right? So if we had both these people speaking the same line, some people might get confused. This is not standard for a reason. But if a new character is speaking, we put it in a different line every single time. There is no exception to this. This is just a writing thing. This is a hard rule. And then example 4 is what I consider optimized dialogue. If your only concern is getting information to the readers in less words, right? Well, in fewer words, it'll say. Yeah. So, are you feeling better today? He turns to much better, thank you. So it cuts out the hello. Usually in books, people say cut out the greetings because they want to lower the word count. If your character says hello in character, because all of this stuff is assuming these characters speak like this, right? We'll get to how characters speak later. I don't mind reading hellos because like your audience will usually glance over it and get to the other stuff. So, but because of that, some writers say like cut it out, and that's what they think of like optimized dialogue. And then in the personal note, I have my personal style, right? Efficient, leaning towards subtext and making it concise. This way I cover like 4 or 5 different plot points within 1,500 words of dialogue, because my book is mostly dialogue. I also focus on moving the camera through the scene. We'll talk about that in a different video, as conversations unfold to build the description as they become relevant. So I don't info dump, I spread out information. For the example, how do you feel? He turns to her, better than yesterday. So she's asking how he feels. Audience, the implication is he wasn't feeling well and she's aware of it, right? He turns to her, so he's talking to that woman, better than yesterday. So he's improving, and he was sick yesterday, and we can assume she asked him this same question yesterday, or like got an update on his health yesterday. So that's all the subtext. And this gets a lot done and tells us somewhat about the characters, rather than like just optimized dialogue. That's very bland. But this is a personal style thing, that's why I just have it here. No, the breakdown. Readers expect dialogue to be understandable. That's the baseline. Understandable is what you're going for first. Everything afterward is refinement. Everything afterward is the the top whatever percent, right? Focus on making it understandable before you think about character voice or dialect, how they speak or show personality differences using dialogue. So understandable is the goal. If it's dry, leave it dry until you get a rhythm of how to write dialogue, and then you can focus on adding character traits and personality and a bit of quirkiness into the dialogue. Now, I have here a very standard expectation sheet for how readers expect characters in a generic setting to be, right? So aristocrat slash noble slash smart characters, no conjunctions or slang. And as the example, I put Captain Raymond Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I think he's the best example of this that people can like easily grasp. Commoners or regular characters, more slang and personality in their language. So everybody on Modern Family speaks like this, but all the main characters on Modern Family speak like this. Alex actually speaks like a in between noble and commoner because she's supposed to be the in quotes smart person in the show, right? And then peasants slash less educated characters, broken grammar and language. So they might be skipping words and things like that, breaking grammar rules, skipping words, using the wrong tense. That's just to show that their level of literacy or like linguistics isn't as high. And then children, younger characters, improper short sentences. That's my shorthand. I've written, well, Oberon is still like 9 years old in his book, and I'm writing a scene right now with like 3 kids, like him and 2 other kids talking. And I'll be real, writing children is a miserable experience, but for the most part, that's how I do it. I make sure to always have shorter improper sentences for the children characters, and that way you have to write less of them, and it feels more realistic because a child's mind isn't structured. They're jumping from one point of interest to the next, right? So having a long unbroken sentence doesn't really seem to fit. They just want to get something done and go to the next fun thing. So that's how I write kids. Now, descriptions. This is what you describe more than how to describe it. Because this is, again, as I said, writing 101. So all I want you to do is describe exactly what is on the page, right? So first let's go through first and second person, and then I'll go to the full description breakdown after. First and second person, only what the character knows or has experienced. In first and second person, has or will experience. Second person is where I just added it in there for the sake of completionism, basically. But first person is what I'm really talking about here. Only what characters know or has experienced. Your character is the narrator, so you can't describe something they don't know about. Third person limited, same thing. It's just phrased differently. The only major difference is that in third person limited, instead of saying I did something, you say he did something or she did something. If it's a girl or a boy, if it's a boy or a girl, respectively, right? Your character isn't exactly the narrator, but the knowledge the narrator has is from the character. So it's just a matter of wording. That's the main difference with those. Third person omniscient, describe anything you want. This is the beauty and the most difficult part of it. And then this is why we have like an entire different sub breakdown for third person omniscient, right? This is what I write in, is what I'm most knowledgeable about. I had to research these just for this video. So, different styles of third person omniscient. Top down / wide to narrow lens. This is, I guess this is Lord of the Rings. When they zoom out on the Shire in the beginning, right? They come through the clouds or something, and then like you zoom into the house and you see Bilbo. That's what this means. It means you describe everything in the room, and then you talk about what the character is doing. So you set up all the pieces and the room and how it looks and where the sun is and all that before you place and then you place the characters in it, and then the scene begins. Okay? You set the stage before the play starts. That's all it is. Active character. This is what I do. This is much more. This is difficult to do compared to top down, and it's because you have to decide which props are important and which aren't to describe them first. Your sequencing needs to be really good if you're doing active camera, and I'll make videos on that too. Now, you describe things as they become relevant / as the character interacts with them. Okay, this is if effectively writing in third person limited with the advantage of showing other characters' thoughts or moving to a different part of the world slash scene at will. So you're effectively thinking about third person limited and you're writing as close to third limited as you can, but you can still use the benefits of omniscient. So you can kind of cheat and do both. Right? This takes some practice. You need to set up the large factors slash props to prevent the audience from going back and rebuilding the image of the scene. So the same thing I said with dialogue, where if someone's reading dialogue and they read a big chunk of dialogue and then the text at the tag at the bottom says Jim instead of Timothy, and they were thinking this was Timothy speaking, they would have to like in their mind go back and imagine Jim saying all of this instead of Timothy, right? And it breaks the immersion and makes them like go back in the book, and it just feels bad to deal with as a reader. And the example here I give is that if there's a dinosaur in the middle of the dining room, right, you mention that when the room is first revealed, not after the characters have been speaking and finally interact with it, right? This causes them to get whiplash and they restart their mental image of the scene, knocking them out of their immersion slash reading flow. So if there's a T-Rex in the middle of the room, you don't wait until they finish their conversation and then they walk over to the T-Rex to start describing it. You mention it as a set piece, right? They walk in and they say, wow, T-Rex. And then a character goes, yeah, we'll talk about that after. Right now we need to deal with this first. And then they start talking. For a simple example, right? Narration slash exposition. First and second person, all narration is considered internal thoughts to an extent, as the character is recounting the story for the audience. So this is the storybook method, basically. Narration is influenced by how the character speaks and think. Heavy emphasis on character voice. Character voice takes time. Your writing style also takes time. These things may conflict with each other. So this takes practice. So you have to just write a lot of words. Generally, what I think is you write 15,000 words in character for first person, and you generally understand how they speak. Because every time the point of view shifts in first person, the narration should also sound differently. Now, only what the character knows or has experienced. Again, same rule, because first and second person, you can only show the POV character's thoughts and explicitly state their emotions. You can say the point of view character is feeling something. You cannot say what anybody else in the scene is feeling because the narrator isn't in their head. Same thing with what they're thinking. You know what the main character is thinking or the point of view character for that chapter is thinking. Not everybody else. Third limited. Only what the character knows or has experienced. This is normal, right? This is the plot twist thing where like the character only knows like the bomb is in the building, and then like suddenly the building next door blows up and they're like, oh, I didn't know that, so the narrator couldn't know that, right? The important thing is you don't lie. That's the important thing. In first person you can lie because the narrator can be wrong, but that's also risky, and that's something I'll talk about in my specific narration video, but this is just for you to start writing. And then in third person omniscient, you cannot lie. If someone lies in dialogue, the dialogue tag becomes he lied or she lied, so you have to say it. This is why this is more difficult to write. And here the narration could be an exposition can be anything you want, which is the biggest advantage because you could tell the audience anything you want, and the biggest disadvantage because some people don't describe enough while others info them to the readers. And I write sci-fi fantasy, so I've seen so many horrific info dumps that nobody wanted or cared about. Generally speaking, do not info dump, aka give like a big breakdown of something that the audience doesn't care about. If we don't care about it, don't tell us about it. Just move on to the stuff we do care about. Right? And this is very important because, where is it? Here, in descriptions, a lot of people will use descriptions as a way to go into info dumping. Okay? Don't do that unless it actually matters. This is why it's important to learn this. Active camera. Because even if you're writing in first person, or third limited, or omniscient, as things get the spotlight, then you give a small breakdown, depending on how relevant they are. This takes skill to figure out like which things are important enough to give the audience a breakdown of. But generally speaking, you should have an idea of which parts of your world are the most interesting. Okay, if you're writing something about like, oh, we're going to explore alien forest, and the character gets their foot stuck in a hole and melts their foot. Then the audience will want to know like, okay, explain this to me. And if you're in first person, there would likely be a science character studying and then explaining. If you're in third limited, you would go from the science character's point of view, or have the science character talk to the person who got their foot melted, they're the main character. And but in third omniscient, you can just say what the acid was and then say they will figure this out after studying it, if you really wanted to. Okay, or you can just say what the acid is and then just skip the scene of them figuring it out. The audience will just assume they know, right? So that takes skill and refinement, which is why volume is so important, which is why I waited until I got almost 2 million words before I started making videos about like what I do to write. Okay, so for this is the basic stuff. You have enough now to actually start writing. It takes time to find your writing style, and your writing style will figure out how refined and which methods for each of these you want to use. So this is the skeletal framework. You need to just get the blood and the muscles and the skin and everything else in place. And we'll go into those things when I go into refining all of this. But the next video will be planning out an original novel, and it'll probably be, I want to say 4 or 5 chapters. It'll be very short, something I can write in a couple of videos in this playlist, then do an editing breakdown in my second last video, then do a final analysis in my final video, and give it away in the description for free, and upload it on my sites for free, so everybody can see the result, right? And you can all judge. But yeah, this is it. Like, subscribe, comment, and if you want to ask me for anything specific, you can check my Discord, or even better, if you want to request some one-on-one chatting or request a specific video topic, you can come here and I'll just make a video on whatever you ask. Because this is the authors think tank. The idea is we get a lot of authors who are all helping each other and adding to the body of knowledge in here, and we all work better together. So, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video, where we start writing our book.